that already on the big smile on my face, particularly when it comes to about the big launch of the Pan-African Daily TV website, AfroWorld.tv, and we are having King Marara the third, Maponga J, right here in studio with us. We would be having a conversation on how we consume what we grow in terms of even goods and services, not just only the products. But of course, there's a revelation that we want to carry out today from a wonderful sister who had this vision about something special. And when she reached out to me and said, tell Joshua, this is what I dreamt, and we need him on the show because he is the person that this vision was referring to educate the African people and Africans worldwide on what is it that we should know at this particular time. So if you're joining the conversation tonight, hey, make sure you warm your seat. I always say it these days, warm your seat, take your pen and paper, and make sure you jot down information, very important information, which we might not be lucky so soon to come on again. I mean, who doesn't know Maponga Joshua and everything he's been doing, his initiatives? And I want to announce that the biggest surprise that would be existing on the AfroWorld.tv is you can connect live and direct with Joshua on a video, on an audio call, because he is currently a pro member of this platform. Of course, I support everything that Joshua does, and as we already know, he is one of the members of the think tank, one of the founding members of the think tank to put the strategy on the continent and how we should be evolving in the next 5 years. Yes, he is one of the biggest strategies, and a couple of meetings will be going on. I know Africans have been asking for far too long. What is going on? We've been existing for more than a year now, and never do we have a plan. We haven't put a plan of the think tank, and I keep getting these questions on the Pan-African Daily TV. Who is actually doing what? Are we not doing the same things, all of us at the same time? But as we all know, I am here on the Pan-African Daily TV, and my responsibility is to raise the funds for the satellite TV that would connect us and network us. But of course, today we are officially launching the AfroWorld the TV. So we are going to roll and start the conversation by a warm greeting to our King Marara Maponga Joshua. Good evening, Joshua.
Good evening to you and good evening to all of viewers, and thank you very much wherever you are in the world, in Africa, in Europe, in Atlantis, and in the East for supporting our Honorable Dr. Tata with the wonderful work that she's doing on these platforms, keeping us abreast. Communicating is a difficult task, but we appreciate you very much and want to thank you for the beautiful work that you have done so far, and congratulations for the new platform that you have created. I think it's a step in the right direction. As I said, I will not rest until we have your own dish that will be flying in the sky, where we can also now run our own TVs without any hindrances. But thank you and welcome one and welcome all.
Thank you very much, Joshua. Mr. Maponga officially. Yeah. Brother,
if you make me Mr., then you make me British, and you mean that I'm a subject of the British Empire. No, I would rather refuse the title of Mr.,
Yes, you are the king, and of course the king is in the right place and sitting, and also the watcher. Could you just tell people, because I've been very active on Maponga Joshua Court's page, and we've been posting you as the watcher, and there've been comments coming. What is that signifying, the watcher? We know about the farmers of thought, but now we're hearing about the watcher.
Yeah, farmers of thought is my thinking space, where I am putting strategies to develop the mind. But the watcher concept is almost a prophetic space, where I decided to step out of the system and maybe have a more critical eye that looks not only into the short-term solution, medium and long-term, The Watcher, therefore, becomes a prophetic voice that says colonization has been here for 400 years. And can we, in this generation in 2020, be able to see Africa in 420, in 620? I'm looking at about 400-year to 500-year plan that as Africans, we need to have that projection into the future. Because this is a quotation, you can put this one tomorrow on one of my quotes. You cannot feature in a future which you can't picture.
You cannot future in a future
You cannot,
which
you,
you can
you cannot
picture.
feature. You cannot feature
Feature. Okay.
in a future
Yes.
that you can't picture.
That you
So,
can't picture.
so we need to have what I call academic projection, social projection, political projection, you know, spiritual projection that looks beyond the colonial system for a sustainable amount of time in the future. The education process of colonization was steady and constant. And that's the powerful way of planning, where people don't like something, but because it is constantly done, you are able to take over a continent, take over their minds, take over their land, take over their human resource, and convert a whole continent into a sub community, which is being managed by a queen sitting in London, and she does not need to visit the countries, but she has put people in those places that are able to manage the project for her. It takes planning to create such a monster. And when such a monster is created, it means that leadership can change, but the agenda does not change. And I think that's where Africa is missing it. Because with a change of leadership, you have the whole change of strategy. And these strategies are changing in our countries every 5 years as new leaders are coming into space, which throws another shadow on democracy, because countries that are being managed by monarchs are doing far much better than countries that are being managed by a democratic system. Countries that are being managed by monarchs are more steady because there is the center, which is the cultural hub, is locked and it is not constantly changing. It allows people a focus and a consistency of a project for a nation building. And so when I take the chair of the Watcher, I'm actually assuming an eagle's view into the Africa that we want to live in, not in our generation, but 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, 15, 20 generations from now. And I can tell you on your platform, as I even say this to the whole world, that our Africa Union, our SADC committees, our COMESA committees, our Africa, what called this OAU, Organization of African Union, they don't have that document. They don't have that kind of thinking that looks into what type of Africa do we want to see 500 years from now. I was laughing this morning when I was flying from Cape Town. I've done more than 2,000 kilometers plus of traveling today in one day. And I saw a newspaper cutting when I was flying out of Cape Town, where the Minister of Finance in South Africa says he's got a 5-year plan on how to pay the debt of South Africa. And I'm saying there's no problem with him organizing a 5-year plan to pay the debt, but it takes them less than 1 month to steal 500 billion of public funding. In less than 1 month, that money had disappeared. And you come up on the national platform and you have 5 years of how to pay a debt, when you are able to create the debt in less than a month and you steal the money, you can see there is a misalignment of the talk of the politician and the lifestyle of the politician, who constantly speaks what the people want to hear. And we now know that politicians create demand, lack, and poverty, because those are campaigning points that legitimize their staying in power. Because if you must make people powerful, then the people will not vote. If people have the means, people have good lives and everything is perfect, people don't have to vote. So ultimately, the system that we're having is being driven by politicians. And I think we need to start also gathering people who can begin to look at Africa through the eyes of the watcher, which becomes a far bigger picture beyond 2063, beyond 2163, beyond 2463. Possibly, let's start talking about 300, 30,000. This is 2020. Let's go to 3030, and let's begin to talk about, so why are we doing that, Honorable Doctor? It is so that we know what infrastructure, what project, what education do we need to start putting on the ground? What quality of foundation, what quality of food, what quality of indigenous plants do we need to preserve? What do we put in the foundation before this beautiful building is put into place? But while I'm still alive, I'll make sure that the foundation part of this building is solid, so that we can build as high as we want to build this continent as Africans. So yes, the watcher, these are my dreams, these are my visions, these are my inspirations that I receive in the course of the night when the world is silent, and I hear suggestions that Africa can be a better place if we do this, if we do that, if we change that, if we change that. So yes, I move at the ground as a farmers of thought. Then I move to the upper side, where I look at the world, particularly at Alkebulam, Africa, from a much wider horizon. People who are standing on the mountain top can always see far much further. Those that are sitting in the valley, they think that mountains are walls. I thank you.
Thank you very much, King Joshua. I think it is very important what you're saying, because most often we are shallow-minded. Hello?
I'm here.
All right. Yes, I said it's very important, King Maponga, what you're saying, because most often we keep talking about a leadership, which is a problem. And yes, now we are getting another kind of a vision to understand that the leadership can change, but if the agenda doesn't change, it doesn't make any difference who is sitting in that house. And yeah.
And maybe while we are on that, we need also to maybe appreciate the American model, a kingdom and a government that came into place in 1796 or 1774, thereabouts, hardly 200 years ago. But because they put their structures in place one block at a time, when you look at that country 200 years later, they've been able to build, to a certain extent, some amount of stability around their economy, around their military, around their intelligence, and they've been able to siphon out lots of resources around the world because their system is working. I said it the other day, you can even put a dog to run American government, the government will still run. That's why even under the leadership of Trump, an arrogant, rude, almost an average citizen in terms of brain power, but he could rule and run America without even the necessary qualifications, either by temperament or academic success. Why? Because the system that he is sitting on has enough instruments that have been placed into power, which the American people understand. At the end of the day, you can put Obama, you can put Ronald Reagan. The war in Afghanistan has been going on for 18 years. Every president who has come in and go, they still carry the same agenda because that's what was agreed upon. The sanctions have been there for countries such as Zimbabwe for 2, 3 presidents later. And the agenda does not change, though presidents are changing. So you find that when you begin to think in a forward look, the American people have been told that Afghanistan is a threat to America. And that's a message that they keep on telling the Americans. But only the leaders know how much of the minerals and resources and opiums they are taking out of Afghanistan every day, while they are proclaiming that Afghanistan is a threat to the American democratic system. At the end of the day, there's no threat. It is an economic harvest time. There's a certain resource that they're getting from Afghanistan, which they would not be able to access should Afghanistan become a free economy, and bearing in mind that there's an Islamic influence within the region. So it is actually a management of the politics of a country so that you can access the economics and the resources of a country. But what I'm emphasizing is where the agenda is clear, whether it is right or it is wrong, you are able to drive a nation in a certain direction with consistency, as long as your nation is benefiting. Having said that, therefore, I think Africa, with its divisions of small countries, which I call fake and false nationalism, Cameroon, Senegal, Zambia, South Africa, and we fight over crumbs as African dogs under the master's table until maybe we begin to think of a consolidated Africa Union, Organization of African Union agenda, or United Kingdoms of Africa agenda, or African Indigenous Movement agenda, or the ADO economic agenda, or the political stamina that Lumumba could have. If that could be consolidated into a greater African direction, we could begin to have a solid blueprint. Even while we are still divided, this blueprint can be given to every African government, that while we are moving towards African unity, this is what we envisage that all African countries must start moving towards. Standardizing our economics and currencies, standardizing our education systems, reworking and relooking at our internal and external policies, immigration and etc., pharmaceutical backup plans, disaster management strategies, beginning to look also at indigenous knowledge systems, food security issues, disaster management strategies, and fashion, for example, education, curriculum transformation, environmental preservation, fashion, entertainment, sort of repositioning ourselves, technological, galvanizing and symbiosis, and engineering, platforms, and these elements which form the DNA of our economy, if they are consolidated into a blueprint, then our African political systems can begin to read from the same book, like they do in churches, where we are now singing from the same hymn book. Though we are singing in different languages, but we are singing the same song. We have the same objectives. We are sharing the same continent. We are leading the same people, so that we stop doing small national politics, but begin to discuss a great African agenda, consolidated, focused, and long-term. I thank you.
Thank you very much. I mean, this is deep, and this is exactly the knowledge that we are progressing into. I like it because, like, when we started last year and we were talking about, all of us are on the conscious journey, because the first thing is being conscious. And that's why I'm really excited even about the Afro World TV, because we have this vision. It has to be for conscious Africans. Now, because we know not all of us are awake, not all of us are on that point. So the mixing is still going to be there. When is it appropriate that we now think that, yes, we are ripe to fight even the cyber crime that you were talking about last time? How can we get a platform that is strategic in a way that I know this is Joshua Maponga's profile, it is him. And so we can communicate and share information and plan. A lot of information is being repeated in other formats as Africans are waking up. Everyone is just running helter skelter. Everyone wants to do something, of course, which is right. How can we canalize exactly in this strategy that you're talking about to get a sense of direction?
My grandmother used to send me to the forest to go and harvest a certain type of grass that she would use for making brooms for sweeping the house. There are two types. There's a big one for sweeping outside, the big grass, but there's another small, very fragile one, which she would use for sweeping inside the house. And these pieces of grass are so fragile, but yet very, very nice and neat. If you can take one of them from the stack, you can break it easily. You can actually just break it. But once they've been tied up into one bundle, you cannot break that bundle together, because every weak blade of grass becomes stronger in the unity of the plenty and the many. The danger we are facing now on this awakening, as you are saying, it is the plural agendas of everyone waking up to do what they want to do. And then we have these blades of grass that are in the hands of colonialists. We have these blades of countries that are in the hands of colonialists. It is easy to break these initiatives. I was calling, number one, for a consolidated amalgamation, not only of personnel in terms of the leaders we have, Dr. Chombori, Lumumba, many of the PAC and Pan-African organizations that are stalking through the land. Some are coming through cryptocurrencies, some are coming through various methods. And the danger again is that everyone in those spaces wants to be the leader and champion that. If we fail at this moment to put ourselves together, when I'm talking about a strategy, we could write 600, 700, 800 pages worth of a strategy. I remember the other day you had the doctor here who had a reset button of a strategy of what he wanted to do to change Africa. The start button, is it Mrambio who came on the stage? Also beautiful work that he has done. I want to give you a three-point plan strategy for Africa. I call it PDA.
PDA.
PDA. Everyone can remember this. Here is it. P represents plan.
Plan.
D represents do.
Do.
A
Action.
represents adjust.
Adjust. Oh, okay.
Adjust.
Adjust.
That page is found in the book that I wrote entitled So You Want to Be the Master. Plan, do, and adjust. And under planning, we are looking at serious projection, strategic development strategies. But the arc of them all is education. Educate, 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 so that we can have the mental faculties, perceptions, and thoughts, all of them focused into one ideology. America was able to achieve that through the concept of American dream, the American dream, which was built into their national anthem. And it is a future that every American child will sing from primary, creche, high school, college, up to employment. That song of the
Mhm.
American dream constantly is bombarded. Hitler achieved that through the symbol of swastika,
Mhm.
that symbol. Russia will never surrender. You sell an ideology of the purity of the Germans until all the Germans can move together in one direction and become an indomitable force. China achieved that through the principles of Mao Mao as their
Mhm.
great on the social developing of a socialist state. As we talk right now, Ubuntu has not been developed
Mhm.
to that where it can become a national anthem from the cradle, so that when children are born in Africa, they are introduced to this ideology. It must be re-emphasized throughout vocational, formal, and informal education until every child buys the idea, studies the idea, works on the idea, eats from the idea, and harvests from that idea. That ideological framework becomes the blueprint through which every generation is able to transmit this, which I might call the African dream, the African vision. What is an African? Where are we coming from? Where are we going? Why are we making children? And what do we want to see them become? What are we giving or leaving with them in their hands after we die, so that they can carry the dream forward from one generation to another? This concept of a marathon, where you run, when you're tired, you pass on the baton, leadership transformation, leadership transfer, power transfer from one generation to another. We don't fight when we are handing over the baton to another person who is running the same race, as we see in African leadership, where every time leaders must change, people must take their guns and run and shoot each other and kill each other. That's not handing over of power, like what Donald Trump did to Joe Biden, refuses to hand over the baton to the following man. That gap on its own creates imbalance and instability within a nation. Therefore, we need to think first as African leaders right now, and I'm appealing to all of us as African leaders, that the first platform we need to start considering seriously, what are we including in our planning? I know some amongst us are already in the doing part. But take note that when you start doing things without understanding what you are doing, without the blueprint of what you are doing, without the time frames of what you are doing, it's like a person who wants to build an 18-story building and he is too busy. He has no time to write a plan. He has no time for a BQ, bill of quantities. He has no time to survey the ground. He doesn't have time to get the paperwork that is ready. All he wants to do is start building. Most likely, this building you're in a hurry to build will collapse on you, will fall on you, will kill people, will sink in the ground. The research that is needed to establish the African ground is not us as leaders to decide what we think people want. It is for the people to tell us what they want. And by understanding where the people are, we can plan correctly by surveying the environment accurately, so that our implementation plan cannot be in a hurry to doing before we even start planning. Ultimately, to adjust a program. That is what in construction, that's what they call variations. Variations
Mhm.
will happen, but variations are happening on a solid structural plan that you have in your hand. So I wanted to recommend our generation, with all the leaders that we have right now on the Pan-African space, we all need to focus on education, on solid planning. ADO and organization for Dr. Chombori, the honorable doctor, plan is brilliant. The doing is brilliant. But are people on the ground fully comprehending what we need to do? So that in our planning, we engulf and incorporate the doing part. By the way, doing is easy. Planning is difficult.
Yes.
Because planning has to do with looking at the pros and cons, risk assessment, environmental assessment, human resource assessment, machinery assessment, proximity to water supply, proximity to road and access, and etc. What is the health conditions, seasons of etc. It's a whole strategical thinking that goes into good planning. And the proverb says, failing to plan is planning to fail. And I think in terms of our leadership that we have right now, the thousands of initiatives that are on the ground, I want to call for a consolidation, coming together of a thinking, strategic group of people, so that those who are into communication like yourself, you can focus at communication and then put around yourself all the people who are interested in communication, public speaking, media coverages, and etc. You stand on one side. Those that are interested in cultural development issues, indigenous this, indigenous that, I could maybe assist in that regard, as I have a passion for that. If someone has an interest in engineering, construction, and infrastructure development, they also stand on the other side. Someone interested in medicine and indigenous herbs and etc., and clinical, and they stand on the other end. Someone interested in education, they also come around, stand on the other end. Someone interested in governance, law, legal frameworks, like Dr. Lumumba, for example, political transformation, the DNA of running African governments, so that we do not overpopulate. And as I said the other day, one of the greatest dangers we have is that, as I said to you the other day about our young men in Uganda, that in as much as you want to transform a country, you cannot transform a country into the same colonial system which oppressed you while the leaders were there. You just become the same leader and there'll be no meaningful change that is happening in that space. So maybe we need to look at a 5 to 10 year plan of serious planning and serious strategies. And while we are planning, let us also start closing some certain taps where it is leaking, so that our planning does not end up with the destruction and the reduction of life of the common people that we are leading forward. So we plan, after planning, then we do as a collective. And in the midst of doing, then we can always adjust. And while we are adjusting, we're already planning again. And after we plan, we do. And then we adjust, plan, do, adjust, plan, do, adjust. Relationships survive like that. You cannot say, I kissed him at the age of 18. You will wake up one morning and he's gone. You plan, you do, you adjust, you plan. Businesses run in the same framework. Plan, do, adjust. Brands run in the same framework. Coca-Cola did not begin with a beautiful bottle that looks sexy like a woman. They had to understand, first of all, you start off with a small little lousy, clumsy bottle. But as you understand your market more and more, others want it in 5 liters. Others want it in 100 mils. Others want it in 7.5. Others want it in 500 mils. Then to the different markets, you begin to brand your product to speak to different people and different environments. But while you are changing, the brand is the same. I thank you.
King Marara, I tell you, I think when you speak like this, I see even from the comments and all our followers, they're just saying, you have to lead this think tank. I also have that, and I've been telling you all the time, yes, the think tank is there, the group is already there, but someone that has this, because like, for instance, your role as a watcher, cannot just be a role of a motivational speaker. It's a visionary, and now we even say a chief visionary. And most Africans that are waking up, maybe that should be the first step also, like to even know, who am I as an African? I had a conversation with Sister Kalen, who gave that vision that I gave to you, which we'll be talking on in the next on this topic. Like, The idea is, even in the education sector, the first thing that we should be doing now is just like even start a training on how to be an African. Do you think that is relevant? Just how to be an African?
We without identity, you have destroyed initiative. You wake up one morning, Dr. Tata, and I take away your name. Then what are you? Where do you begin as a nameless person? How do you begin to build a profile to the level that you have built so far? When you are starting from zero, you wake up tomorrow morning and your name is now Cecilia.
Give another name, please. Okay, my kid.
I had to use just a name for crying out loud. You wake up tomorrow morning, you are Portia, starting from scratch. You need an ID, you need qualifications, you need to build reputation, you need to without identity, it's complex for people to think that you can build Africans who are actually pseudo Africans, who are Africans by color, as I call them, coconuts, who are brown on the outside but white on the inside. And I'm not saying so in the context that we are using English language as a modus operandi, the way of communicating with each other. I'm saying so in the truest intrinsic fashion, that we can still use some of these languages for the same reason that we have not yet learned each other's languages. To an extent where by now we should be able to talk to each other without necessarily fearing what neighbors are saying. But should I start speaking in my own home language right now, I may remain talking alone by myself. But identity is not just identity in terms of identifying your color. It is identifying your food. It's identifying your tribe. It's identifying your culture, identifying your medicines, identifying your value, identifying your rituals. And when you identify these things, you embrace them. And by embracing your identity, you are chasing away another identity. Hence, hashtag, the best way to fight any other culture is to embrace your own. There's no war. There's no war. I'm not fighting with you. I just refuse to eat your food. Correct. I refuse to buy your. I refuse to give my money to you. I refuse. And by embracing myself, automatically I'm disempowering you. So we say the dog that you feed will always bite the dog that is hungry. And the one that you are feeding always gets stronger than the one that is starving. So listen to me very carefully, Africans. To destroy the colonial system, I'm not calling bullets and guns. It's too late. There'll be too many casualties. I'm simply saying, let's refuse with our resources. Let's create a parallel system to the colonial system, parallel banking, parallel fashion, parallel entertainment, parallel education. And where we put our money will always be more powerful than where we are taking away our money from. And for me, this is the simplest. If, for example, in Freetown, in the city of Freetown, all the citizens of Freetown can say, we are no longer going to be buying bread from the white shops. One of us must be the bakery in the community. And all of us in the community will buy our bread in this shop. Less than a year, that white business will be out of business and they'll pack their bags and go. And the people will remain eating and they are not hungry. See, this is where we need to think. The strategy has to do with, we are not going to be buying those uniforms. I like what Ghana did the other day by refusing to put on colonial uniforms. And for the first time, they're now saying their children are going to put on traditional Ghanaian material as uniforms. Good
Absolutely.
step in the right direction. But the second question is, who is manufacturing those clothes? Because
And
now,
even which books are they going to be using? They can still wear them to go to a church.
But it's a good start. It's a good start, at least, of saying the local women are now going to be producing these uniforms for our schools. But we need to step one step backwards and say the uniforms, in terms of the manufacturing, is in our hands. Now, who owns the materials that we are making the uniforms with? Step number 2. So we need the industries that spin the materials. Stage number 3 at the back. Who is plowing the cotton that is feeding the materials, that is feeding the uniforms? So that you own what I call in English the value chain of your consumption. It's not only about talking about food. That's where we are going, by the way. We're not just talking about food as of what we eat, because our food is colonized. Who is planting that food? What seeds are they using for planting this food? Who is supplying this food? At what profit do we finally have a plate of pizza and a plate of ugali, a plate of sadza in our hand? What has gone in the value chain, and who owns that? Is it a clean process? Is this food good for consumption? Has it been tempered? Is it healthy for human consumption? I saw a tank of water the other day somewhere in Africa. This water is good for drinking, but not for European stomachs. Such arrogance. Where dirty water Africans can consume, but Europeans, please don't drink this water. So the one who put on that sticker knows what he's doing with that tank of water. That let the Africans drink this water, but if you are European, please don't drink this water. Same thing goes for food. Why is Europe and America buying organic foods from Africa, but they are selling Africans genetically modified seeds for food? Why is it that the high quality beef in Africa is being exported into Europe and America, and third grade beef is what is remaining in Africa? Why are first grade fruits being exported out of Africa, and only third, fourth, and fifth grade fruits are remaining for the local consumption?
God. The microphone? No volume.
I'm with you.
Okay.
I'm with you. Yes.
All right. Yes, of course. Those are the questions that bring us to consciousness. Like you started by, like, the first thing is, if we just embrace, like I read the comment from one of our sisters who said, Professor James would just say, swim in your culture. The moment you swim in your culture, you just make every other thing irrelevant. So we can't even be talking about one thing to even change a system. The only thing to change any other thing for an African is just be African. King Maponga, I reached out to you because a sister had a vision, and I told you that. And because we talked about you as the role of a watcher. And I know the first thing when we relocate or we come into the West, like the typical example, when I came to Germany, a German would tell you the day you would dream in German, then you've arrived Germany. I mean, that was in class. You're doing the language course and stuff like that. Then the professor would tell you the day you dream in German, then you are a German, or you have arrived Germany. Now, it's the same thing like you're saying, until Africans would really dream in African or Ubuntu, then we become Africans. So consciousness.
But while on that, maybe let me respond to what you said initially. Also, that when the people decide how they want their organizations to run, and I don't want to lead by election. I would rather lead by appointment. The difference of election is based on voting. The, the one for appointment is actually based on value. I'm prepared to share in value what I have, but I will not stand on a queue to have a ballot of choose this one or choose that one. I would rather support whoever wants to be put in there to run in that direction, because the elective process lacks the virtue of value that comes with it. And secondly, the African who goes to Europe in a million years will never be European.
Absolute.
But the European who comes to Africa, in less than 2 weeks, he wants to be identified as an African. So you can always see the disparity that money gives identity and poverty assumes identities. I thank you.
Thank you very much. That's one of the points that we're talking about. A lot of Africans are asking the question, when is it the time that we now know that, yes, even though we have a 400 years plan, but we want a fast plan for those that are actually just living their moderate life and just want to survive. Where is the starting point? They create stuff, they manage their own lives, they feed their families, they educate their children, and then someone is just going to label them always with the tag that these ones are poor. When is it that we Africans would understand that yes, we are not relying on this kind of narratives, and that we are who we are by what we do?
The misconception is to understand the difference between those that are surviving and those that are living. Survival is not a quality of life. Living is the ideal. So the fact that you can pay rent, your children are in school, you can drive top German cars, you can afford medical aid, and you can die and retire and leave your children a flat in Frankfurt or a house, does not mean that you lived. It could simply mean that you survived the system.
Mhm.
We are not here to advertise and talk about survival. We are talking about living. And the disadvantage we have is that of the middle class, who think that by being able to afford their bills, they've arrived. The change that we are looking for is generational. The change that we are calling for is sustainable. The middle class educated group needed, as I said, I think it was the third interview that you called me on your platform. If you can rewind that conversation that we had, where we spoke about the professionals locally in Africa and in diaspora. Going back to point number 2 that I had mentioned, of gathering people together in various faculties, so that the educational part has to do with the professionals that are outside there in the world, who are Africans, who want to see this vision come forth. Means taking their education, their knowledge, and their skills, in some certain cases, even their resources, coming together and begin to make transformation in that faculty meaningfully. If all the faculties can be activated towards transformation, banking will change, entertainment will change, education will change, health systems will change. Why? Because it is being championed by the Africans, who both have the resources, the education, and the understanding of the particular fields, and can also compete competitively with the external world. Why am I saying that? 5 to 10, 15%, if I'm not mistaken, of all professors and lecturers in Europe and in America are blacks. I could be conservative, there could be more. In some certain universities, 30 to 40% of the staff is African. Pure Africans, Ghanaians, Zimbabweans, Nigerians, Cameroonians, Senegalese, who are running these institutions, manufacturing, giving the best of their years to the colonial system. What do they get at their retirement? A wall full of non-transferable certificates and doctorates, a watch maybe, and a small little trophy. Thank you for the task. And they'll go back and retire. Professor Emeritus, Professor Emeritus. Now, what are we saying is that Africa, if we can begin to attract this brain power, even from their places of work right now, those that are interested in the backward look, Sankofa, into Africa, can begin to give guidance, can begin to give information, can begin to give strategic consultation to the organization. I think it was interview number 5, where I called to all the Africans in diaspora that let us create a database of professionals, African professionals around the world, so that we can classify those professionals into their various faculties of expertise, from agriculture, food, water, and etc. We identified the projects that are in Africa, where we can begin to back up some of these projects are profitable because they are tenderable. We can put a tender out there using various instruments that are already on the ground, so that we can begin to implement the change that we need. If we think that we can only do the revolution in culture, for example, in spirituality, where I happen to be an expert in, our change will be very slow, because from the spiritual and cultural struggle, I still have to struggle with education. I still have to struggle with politicians. I still have to struggle with media. I still have to struggle with the industry. And some of those are not interested in changing. Instead, they have become the champions of advancing the colonial agenda altogether. So the revolution must be as wide as possible, as consultative as possible, as inclusive as possible, so that we also have the manpower that we need, the skills that we need, and with manpower and skills put together, we can attract the resources that are necessary to drive the greater African agenda towards the future that we want to see. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, even though it conflicts a little bit, kind of like, it's just like you're talking about the young, it is complex. I don't know how I want to put it. Even the professionals that are coming from the West, for instance, those of them that have been doing, take an example like in agriculture, and they've been doing the technology, which is the GMOs. I mean, I still think that though they are professionals, they will still have to go through the Afrocentric idea of the indigenous culture and our values to be able even to attend that a certification or professional status. If we are trained by the same systems and we learn the same technology, how applicable are we going to? Is it not going to be like same leadership?
The advantage of what you are saying and the beauty of it, that's where you come in as Pan-African, at Pan-African TV, where you become the filter, you become the educational platform to introduce their educational qualifications to the African blueprint. So now that you have the technology and the knowledge of how to plant, you're not coming here to plant genetically modified foods. We'll give you our indigenous seeds. So what we need is the technology of how to do certain things. For example, how to build cars. So instead of us taking our minerals to China, where they are making them into cars and bringing to sell them back here, why can't we take your knowledge that you already have of building automobiles and then access you to the raw materials and the technology and produce local automobiles? For example, when it comes to agriculture, yes, you are very correct, planting our indigenous foods. When it comes to medicine, Come in as a doctor, as a pharmacist, but okay, for Panadol, for headaches, you are using this. In Africa, we're using this. What are the active ingredients? Which plants do we have that give you the same active ingredients? But because you know how to make tablets, you can now take indigenous crops and make them into, so that we create what I might want to call generic Afrocentric indigenous medicines, which are actually local. So we are not importing the external or foreign African knowledge system, pen and barrel, so that we are simply saying, come here and do what you were doing in Germany. We say, bring the skills of what you were doing in Germany, but now see how do you contextualize them? How do you indigenize them? And how do you practically apply them on the ground so that indigeneity, contextualization, and enculturation, three very important words: indigenize, contextualize, and enculturate that knowledge so that it is relevant to the local people. So we need to use those three words across the whole fraternity of infrastructure and development and civilization, so that our civility does not undermine culture, does not undermine indigenous knowledge systems, and does not undermine the culture in which we are finding ourselves operating in. So indigeneity, contextualization, and enculturation becomes the filter through which external information is implemented on the local ground, so that we do not end up again duplicating the same colonial system. Banking, for example, we need to indigenize it, we need to enculturate it, we need to contextualize it. What does that mean? You can go to Maasai, you don't need to build a bank, because their bank are their cattle. So there you have it. They already have the infrastructure, they already have the resources. The question is, how do you convert those thousands of cattle into a viable economy through which the Maasai person does not need to go to Nairobi to withdraw his money, because he does not need the money. As long as he has his cattle, he has his money. So you need to understand the culture in which the Maasai person is doing his business. And understanding that culture, then you come and say, how do I indigenize the foreign concept of banking and fuse these together so that the economies and the cultures and communities that are living in harmony with nature are not necessarily frustrated with bank balances, frustrated with double entries, frustrated with monthly end statements, which they cannot even read, because you need accounting to do that. They already know how to count their cattle. That's perfect. So foreign knowledge systems. You don't come here and say, I want to build a new hospital. I want to build a hospital for you to the Himba people who don't even know what a hospital look like. They know how to deliver their women naturally. So why would you want to frustrate them and say, no, I want to build a hospital? They don't need a hospital. But if you're a medical person, you want to go into this community, study and learn and see how can you actually further enculturate your knowledge system into the indigenous system that is working perfectly. I thank you.
Oh, it is. Each time when you're here, King Maponga, we just try to rumble and get the best out of you, because I know that most of us have profited, but most of us are also frustrated. We're frustrated because we would have been liking to hear, oh, where do I put my money and which part in which sector and stuff like that. How can I get access to an African president that I can lobby, or how can I reach out to a politician that is sitting on the minings or minerals of Zimbabwe? How can I penetrate? This is the mindset exactly that we're talking about. Every African that has a step just want to, what we call chop, just want to take as fast as. But now you're here talking about, what if we look into 400 years, 300 years, which is what we've never thought about, which is what we have thought always about the present. I want to get into the politics so that I can influence my people and I can just have my own and just make some small money for myself and exist and survive and say I made my name. Now, but you're telling us something else, a reverse strategy, which we need to pull. I think we need to even go back before we skip into the future of thinking that this is possible and to do it. Now, I want to come back to the dream. All right,
Can
say
I add,
something before I go to it. Go ahead.
can I add something right there?
Yes.
The first question is healthy. Uh, my hands were built for war.
Mm.
And having said that, I understand battlefields and I understand battle planning. Every good army general has to fight the battle 2, 3, 4, 5, sometimes even 10 years before the actual hands-on combat. You call your generals, you call your leaders, you sit with them in a room every morning for 3 years, 4 years, studying the terrain of the enemy, studying the weather patterns, studying the food supply, studying the mountains, studying the people, so that by the time you lift up your army to go and fight, you don't find surprises. You don't go there the wrong season. You are clear of where your water will come from. You are clear where your food supply will come from. And you are clear of the strategy you are going to be using to target these enemies. So there are two types of battles. There's the battle of the generals. The battle of the king is that of planning. When I walk out of my palace with a spear in my hand, and I look in the direction in which the battle must go, and I throw my spear to go, to unleash the army to go towards war, I am saying, I know what is waiting ahead of you, and I have planned for it. And my will and my desire is now with you. To an extent that in the times of old, the king himself will be leading the battle to go there. But you'll be a fool as a king to lead an army into the forest of Sambisa and tell them to go and fight the enemy. He
Mhm.
underestimated he underestimated the weather. He did not know that the people were more powerful than him. He planned that when he crosses the river Rhine, he will go there and collect food at the nearest town. When people heard that Napoleon is coming, they deserted their town and left it empty. Napoleon arrived there and found there was no food, there was no support, plus the weather was cold. Soldiers died, and he had burned the bridge for them not to go back. That's how he lost the battle. No matter how much they want to idolize the wars of Napoleon, but that was the losing part. He lacked proper planning for crossing over. It's not a reverse thing that I'm talking about. It's important. Those who want to invest so long in some small strategies that are there, individual, privately, or corporately, there is still lots of money to be made in Africa. But I think today you find me in a totally, you asked me maybe a wrong question at the beginning when you said, why do they call you a watcher? And I think I went to my tower where I am looking at this African problem at a far-reaching, point of advantage. Unlike sometimes when I'm in the farming space and I'm just saying, let's do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which are short-term solutions. But the problem is not short-term. The problem
Mhm.
is actually long-term. Some of the relationships we can establish now, and some of the business that we can establish now, if we can meet and we can talk and we can discuss and plan them properly and make sure that the foundations are correct and network with other countries with those ideas can actually fly into the 400-year plan that we are talking about. But some of the ideas that some of our leaders have, if they don't go through scrutinizing, yes, they'll make money in the short term, but in the long term of things, we may actually find ourselves trapped again in the midst of big problems. I don't know how far true it is that, for example, the Icon City, lovely young man, I love him very much, with the idea that he has come up with for building Africa and etc. But we're also hearing rumors of monies that he has borrowed from the Chinese, monies that he has borrowed from some of the European banks and etc. Beautiful. You can borrow money and etc. But when you borrow money, what are the percentages? What are ownerships? How sustainable are these ideas in the long term? Is this not just another way where you think that you are running fast enough to get something done, only to end up surrendering the whole work of what you have done back into the colonial hands? Those are the checks and balances we need to put into place. For we cannot, everyone who borrows money creates slaves out of his own children. You didn't hear me.
Mm-hmm.
One who borrows money is creating slaves out of his own children.
Absolute.
So our money is us. And our money has to do with us buying black, us educating black, us healing black. Allow our resources to circulate amongst ourselves in such a way we can empower ourselves. You buy flowers, as I've said, you buy your roses, you buy your chocolates, and etc. Take some of you, buy your sodas, you buy your fuzzy drinks. Come on, guys, stop drinking some of this stuff. Drink water. Take those extra 2-3 Deutschmarks, $2-3 and pounds. Let's start putting them in a common basket so that that money can begin, firstly, to assist us to build a greater African strategy. Invest, by the way, in construction. Even the one who does the plan for you gets paid for that. It costs money to plan. You don't walk up on the street to someone driving a matatu and say, please draw a plan for me. You draw a house similar to the one he's living in. You want to live in a palace, you identify a correct contractor who knows his engineering well, and he's not be coming to you at two Deutschmarks and 3 Deutschmarks. You must be prepared to pay genuine money to get a strategy in place. I'm just here to make it very clear for us tonight so that we don't get excited over popcorn. This is it's a balloon. It looks this big. When you punch it, there's nothing inside. Yes, we have a plan for Africa, but that plan has not yet been thoroughly toothpicked to a blueprint of a continent. Yes, some organizations have tried to write their strategy and business plan, but those business plans are looking at their organizations. I'm looking at a continental footprint that we can actually set the African governments, all the African leaders, and we can be able to have one song that all organizations, be it financial organizations, educational organizations, political organizations, Pan-African organizations, we can begin to speak with one voice to transform Africa in all the various departments and ministries that are involved in terms of social change. I thank you.
Hey, Joshua, I think you need to drink some water now, because we're getting into the phase. I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, we will not be taking questions, particularly when we have this this kind of very educative and I don't know, I don't want to call it sensitive topics, but things that are so genuine and accurate and what we need at this time. We're not going to be taking questions, but you can post your questions in the comment section here if you want. Joshua read it anyway. I also will read it and bring it over to you, but I will not be opening the lines today because we have a lot on our plate and we have to catch it as soon as possible. King Maponga, a sister reached out to us from the UK, Sister Kalena. She's also coming on the show next week, and she had a vision, and that vision, you had to interpret that vision. And that's how I reach out to you, and you're like, okay, let's just do it today, even before we begin to talk about other things and launching and whatever. Anyway, the vision was very clear. She had a vision that on the continent, she saw this huge farm and a farmer. And I mean, green, very massive farmland. And suddenly in that dream, she saw a colored, they call us colored person, a white man that owns that farm. And somewhere must have been in Southern Africa, some kind of thing, maybe Zimbabwe, let me just say, or South Africa. And in that dream, that white man warned her, or were warning people not to eat of that, not to eat the greens, like not to eat the beans that was growing or something like that, because it's all poisoned. Now, the first thing is the vision, and the second thing is the fact in that vision. Now, that was why I don't think I asked the wrong question in the beginning. We were talking about your role as a watcher and as farmers of thought. And you said as a watcher, you see what comes. And as a farmer of thought, it's just the practical day-to-day stuff that we can do to better our own lives. Now, this sister also had been on this journey. And like I said, we'll be sharing her amazing story and incredible stuff. But she had this vision for you. And now we're talking about we must consume what we grow, or we must use what we create, or something like that. What do you think that vision is telling us? Because the vision was for you to interpret. Why would that a white man on the continent that has a plan want people not to consume from that because it's poison?
Wow, that's quite uh, a deep prophecy and warning for the people. Firstly, the dream speaks of white men. Secondly, it speaks of crops and plants. Thirdly, it talks of the color of those plants, green, which means they are well watered. It speaks of water also. And fourthly, it speaks of the warning that don't eat what is being planted by this white man. I hear a siren of contaminated water, which is feeding the crops. I hear of a solution that is being put into the crops that is generating poisonous food for the African people. But the dream is quite clear that this is in the hands of the colonial people. And the warning is quite clear. Don't eat that food. Don't eat those greens. It's a clear warning for genetically modified foods and the poison that the African children are facing by leasing out their farms to those that are poisoning their stomachs. I hear a clarion call to the governments that you cannot be talking political transformation when your food is being planted by those whom you don't trust. I hear a word of own what you eat. I hear a warning also for indigenous crops that must be planted. I hear a rebuke to Africans who would be waiting for white people to do for them what they should be doing for themselves. I also hear of a total control of white men standing on vast pieces of land and Africans sitting in their homes in flats in town, waiting for the European men to produce food for them while they are working for their foods in white-collar jobs. I hear Africans refusing to go to the farms. Rather, they will be in stadiums watching soccer instead of standing in the fields where their food is being planted. And this food is not healthy for human consumption. So there are quite a number of interpretations, but above everything else, I hear a warning of food security, that in the direction in which we are going, as long as our stomachs are in the hands of the colonizers, we cannot guarantee our health. Ultimately, it is clear in my mind that our health is our wealth, and our health is in our hands. And we cannot blame the white men for giving us poison when we are not interested in plowing the food that we are eating. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Joshua. I mean, this is the point where Rutendo, I mean, shout out to you, because most of even King Bungane and most of the great speakers, particularly the indigenous, cultural, and conscious Africans that we've been having here on the platform, has been thanks to you. And I think we cannot say it more than enough that even the kings that we'll be having in the series that, or in the future, it's all thanks to you, because you're putting the uka out there, which King Bungane actually told us, my son in whom I trust. That was what he referred to you, my son in whom I trust. And that gave me all goose, all of us here. Yes, so Rutendo is our correspondent in terms of agriculture, in terms of farming, in terms of indigenous and seeds that we can reproduce. But then we have this issue that even Rutendo was telling us last time, it can happen in the southern region of Africa, or the South Africa. But now, if you look at like the West, particularly in the Gambias, they don't have a clue about this. And you can see where the European borders are actually kind of like put their foot so much in the Gambias. What is it that we can do? Is it a problem of, like you talked about, education? Rutendo is thinking we have to create an online or an educational school where we reproduce and teach young people in the different continents to carry up that kind of education and training even on farms. What would you advise?
I think our weakest link is our education department,
Yes.
where the quality of teaching and knowledge and curriculum being distributed from the classroom is totally disassociated from the environment where the student is coming from. So those who go into fields of agriculture, for example, they go there to learn how to plant, trim colonial foreign crops, or how to do oranges, how to do foreign beans, how to breed chickens quickly, and etc. Very little of this education has to do with beneficiating indigenous food reserves and supplies and seeds, crops, plants, and animals that we already have on the ground. As such, the production of our educational system produces slaves mentally and economically of the same colonial system.
Mm-hmm.
Had we been taught from an early age how to make chorus, for example, and you go to class, and when you are training people on music, you are training them how to play chorus in mainstream schools. Imagine a country like Mali producing 3, 4, 5, 6 million chorus players.
Mm-hmm.
What impact those 3 million will do around the globe as they travel to cities and as they change environment. In less than a year to 2 years, you will find that in the German orchestra, in the American orchestra, in the Japanese orchestra, there's now a Senegalese or a Mali person who is playing the chorus. That's impact, because this knowledge has been placed at an early age. I'm just using music as an introduction. Spread this across the entire fraternities of education. I keep on saying the same thing. Spread this kind of mindset in all aspects of indigenous knowledge systems.
Mm-hmm.
You will see that the impact of that knowledge, particularly on our focus area today of agriculture, you will end up actually with African restaurants and African farms, both locally and internationally, who are feeding into the market the genuine African product. I'm saying this, and I'm saying it honestly, that the European, when he's buying things from Africa, he wants them organic.
Yes.
Wants them organic. And the question is simple. Why does he want them organic? Because he understands the food value of the organics. But when they begin to talk about health and poverty alleviation, the same people who are buying organic foods from Africa sit in those committees with their stomachs full of organic African food and they approve budgets of genetically modified foods for the African. That doesn't make sense. It's cruelty at the highest order. For me, it almost sounds into treason. And I'm not ashamed to say this even on public space, that the crimes that the agricultural space is performing, the crimes that the political leaders are performing, and the crimes that the pharmaceutical companies are performing, it is one and the same thing. That if we are not sure there is population control through food, there is population control through politics. Marriage stops and other abortion clinics are being sponsored by the Europeans and the Americans, and they are being scattered around the whole African continent. Contraceptions, poisoned condoms are being thrown around the African continent as much as possible. We can't talk much about corona because we might end up being kicked away from the social space.
Yes.
But the agenda has been consistent. So we are not embarrassed. 2018, a third of the world's population must be reduced. A third of the world must be reduced. Loud and clear, addressing very high-level organizations. You come around in 2020, you have changed your mind. The populations must be preserved. We're not stupid. We're not stupid. I'm not a fool for crying out loud. It's the same mouth that was saying you want to reduce 1/3 of the world. You're coming around now, you want to preserve the same population. I'm not saying that your drugs and your vaccines are poisonous. None for me to mention on that. I don't know nothing about medicine. I'm just holding you accountable to your words. In my tribe, we say, a dog with a leash, a man with his words. I pull a dog when I put a rope on its neck. But a man, when he says something, I can hold him accountable for what he has said. It's not me who said that. It's Bill Gates himself who said that. It's the United Nations that said that. There's a document in Africa Union that speaks to that. There's a document in SADC that speaks to that. There's a document in OAU that speaks to that. There's a document in every African government that speaks of contraception, that speaks of population control, that speaks of how do you control population. As early as 1980 and 1981 in Zimbabwe, we were being taught population control in Zimbabwe. 1980. And this is history that is free on your space. So when we speak these things, the young boys like Zuckerberg and the young little boys like Bill Clinton, not Bill Clinton, what's his name? The young boys who are running the international market must not get infatuated and infatuated with knowledge. They have been saying the same thing and they have been consistent in sending the same message of we want to reduce the population. As early as 1978, 79, we were reading about how the NASA and etc. and NATO were planning to organize trips to Mars and trips to the moon and etc. And the articles I was reading, my father has been a reader for the longest of time. I read those articles when I was still a teenager, that they're saying by year 2040, 2030, whatever, the world will be overpopulated. And we're beginning to look for other alternative accommodation. Are you aware? Google it for me and surprise me. That right now stands are on sale in mass. There's right now a company in America that is selling properties in mass. In mass. And if you understand the logistics of that, 2, 3 items come into space. Number one, atomic war. In case of a war, this world will not be able to live in this world for more than 150 years. In case of a disaster, they want to jump in their aeroplanes and their rocket and jets and disappear. Number 3, in terms of population, explosion, then they want to disappear to another place where they can survive and leave poor people here. And number 4 could just be adventure. moving over into other places where the poor people who are clumsy and uneducated, possibly black people, will not have access to. So having understood this as part of public information that is out there as early as 1978, as I'm talking to you, as early as 1978. Some of you people who are here, you were hardly born. But these things were already being spoken about. We come around now in 2020, and you begin to tell me on my face that you are worried that there's a pandemic and people are going to get wiped off. When for the longest of time you have been consistently talking. China right now is on a population reduction because there's a population explosion. India right now is on a population reduction. Italy is on a population increment because they taught so much contraception and population control that their economy and their population has almost 60% people who are on their way to the grave, and people are not believing in making children. So they've now decided that they want to make a population that is big. It is big on the top in terms of the old people and small at the bottom in terms of young people. These are demographics, population census information that is freely available out there. Having that knowledge, therefore, cannot allow me to look carefully into the eyes of the economists, the eyes of the politician, and the eyes of the agricultural people to say that they are honest in their endeavor for coming up with solutions for the pandemics that are facing the world. Again, in conclusion, when I look at war strategies, you can fight war through guns and barrels. You can fight war through aviation and cyber wars. You can fight wars through medicine, but you can also fight wars through education by making a child fight their own mother and father and kill them. That's war. But most importantly, you can fight war through food. Food poisoning is one of the most quickest way of killing a person. But how about if we understood that genetically modified foods are also weapons of mass destruction?
Absolutely.
Think, my people, think, my people. There are strategies of war that are at play here. We are fighting on the political front. We are fighting on the economic front. We are fighting on the agricultural front. We are fighting on the educational front. We are even fighting in our bedrooms. They are fighting to make sure that whatever happens between your sheets is of concern to them. What goes through your mouth is of concern to them. I thank you.
Wow. Yes. What else do we want to hear? We've heard solutions on how, and we've heard the vision is clear and simple about what we already know. I think it's not even something that we want to struggle to understand. But I like the part that you talked about if we start even by the education of music, why not? We talk too much about other things, and entertainment is one of the biggest sector which Africa is not yet even exploiting, and which we could actually do that. You talked about the playing of kora. I mean, just getting a kora player out here, it's a huge sum of money. But our children, particularly in the diaspora, even on the continent, will prefer to give them piano classes, rather than the djembe or the kora. And now when they take it away from us and start playing and even selling it back to us, and then we are more amazed. It is coming to a season of festivals, and we know one of the biggest resources that we have on the continent is entertainment. King Maponga, you are everything. When I say everything, yes, the watcher, of course, but then I see you also in this cultural. You play the marimba. How many instruments do you actually play? You create your own sounds for all your production.
I've lost count now. I play quite a number, maybe 15 or so.
Ah, okay. Okay. I know. I was just about to ask if you had one in the studio, but I realized that you're out of your studio as you were on the way. And so it wouldn't be possible. Now, just tell us exactly that, because we have a one African, I think, a descendant of Mali or Senegal, who opened up a school for music in the, I think it's Senegal or yeah, or the Gambias. And her idea is actually to produce young people or young Gambians to actually learn that art of uh, learning an instrument, which can be sold globally in terms of this talent.
Mm.
If we look at just the product and the resources about talent available in the Black community, what is it that you can, I mean, just
Uh,
deviating from the political statements?
it's a brilliant idea to actually understand that the colonial project, Africa can colonize the world also, but colonize it in a more developmental way. What do I mean by that? It is by us taking our skills and our art form and our music and our clothes and, as it were, make them available to the world market at a profit to the continent, which is which is business. In that sense, therefore, as you rightfully put it, that African people performing in the West at a profit, it becomes job creation. For example, I'm talking to another young man here in South Africa who is like, if you saw my show the other day where we were playing Mugube, that thing that looks like a bow that
Yes.
we were playing together. Then you are saying, okay, let's see if we can take the bow and put it together with a mbira and a marimba and a djembe and nyatiti and a few other African horns, and let's see if we can create a new African orchestra without even one single European instrument coming on stage, and create for ourselves and our children a new sound altogether. So once you begin talk music, I'll get carried away because I've quite a big passion and interest in that. But this for me now moves into the space of what I call innovation. That culture in our hands cannot just remain a static culture where djembe people of Gambia and can just play their djembes, and the Maasais can just jump, and the Zulus can just hit the drum. I see some time in my mind where the music of the Senegal can be a jumping music played in the background of the humming of the Maasai with the drumming of the Zulus, and coming together of the African people and begin to create a new culture, a new tradition. I think we have enough raw material. We have enough raw material. I should say that again, which if it is given an environment that is conducive, we can actually begin to come up with new products, new sounds. I mean, hence you can even see in some of the fashions that I am making, where I'm simply breaking rules, where you are taking the fashion of Nigeria, combine it with the designs of the South, and the patterns of the North, and come up with new branded, new forms of expression, where innovation is actually sitting at, so that we also understand the dynamics of our own culture. And I think we're looking at African clothes where you can combine Ethiopian stuff with Zambian stuff, and Tswana stuff, and begin but in our hands, I would consider that to be progress. But in foreign hands, I would consider that to be exploitation. Because when we do it ourselves, we are looking for integration. When they do it, they're looking for profit. I thank you.
Thank you very much, King Maponga. We are going to have you on the show again, but we're going to talk this time about fashion and music, because exactly that's what the Pan African Daily TV website, the AfroWorld.tv, is not just only focusing on the media, but on this cultural products that would actually change the narratives. Because we're talking about we need to change our narratives. The narratives doesn't just mean that we're going to be sitting here and repeating ourselves and refurbishing the same thing that you're saying here. You've said it in all different sort of formats, just on the same topic. But now we want to start see that narrative change means that we want to see the products of narratives. Like if we talk about, oh, we need to start consuming our culture and our clothes and our fabrics, then we know that originally cotton is made in Africa. And which countries are making that? We know that if we see Ivanka Trump collection, I have a couple of them. I know that they are made in Ethiopia from Ethiopian cotton, but just put only a tag name on it. So these are also the kind of information and education that we need to know. But for all of you that are watching us, like I said, the Pan African Daily TV website, AfroWorld.tv, is officially open and we're on that conversation. You can follow Joshua Maponga on that platform. I say Joshua Maponga because that's the name that the page is created on. And anything, I mean, we put even collections there. King Maponga, I put the collection, you combine the coat, the blue one, and this rock that you wear, which is actually a rock that I mean that was one of the things that fascinated me a lot. You were putting on a blue coat, and then you had a rock that is purely leather, and then you had this very hat that you're wearing, and I begin to like, what was that combination? What was that story that you were putting out in this collection that you put out there? So apart from Joshua Maponga quotes on every daily things and lives that you can find on the Afro World TV, you can also find all his videos, his music, the passion for instruments, how he creates his marimba and his sounds. We are uploading and transferring everything that this name has from the other social media platforms. Is going to be on the AfroWorld TV. Why? Because you are the champion of culture, and every other thing starts with culture. Joshua.
Mm. No, I thank you very much. And some people have tried to inbox me asking me how much are the heads, how much is this and this. But I said the other time I would wish to actually have workshops and share this information on how you can also create your own arts and how you can create your own crafts and make your own things also. So it's not just more about just selling and selling into a commercial space. I would rather sell the skill itself. And so that every one of us, we can actually sit around, go to the shop, buy some cowrie shells or buy some beads. This is how you build a hat and make yourself your own products. And to me, that kind of sharing of information is in sharing culture at that level allows the dream and the vision to go beyond just commercialization, but to be preserved. And as it is handed over from one generation to another generation, I was fortunate enough. I never sat in a class to be taught these things. I just woke up one morning with a vision and a dream to do something. I cannot lie that anyone taught me. I just woke up one morning with my clothes. I would see something in my sleep. I would see something in my spirit, and I'll go to the marketplace and get the pieces together and start working on. But that's me. That's me with my creative mind, which keeps me alive. Some might not be that creative, but for those who want to learn, I would say it is a beautiful, beautiful space where, for once in your life, you can actually dress up yourself. You can eat from your own garden. You can sing. I mean, sometimes I thought I was getting crazy the other day when I sat in my office and I was reading my book. Can you believe that? I was reading my book, and which I had written. And while I'm reading my book, I was listening to my music, and I was putting on my clothes, and I was sitting on my chair in my house. It's a different feeling, and it felt a bit good that everything that is around me actually, I made this and I built this and I'm listening to this and I'm reading this and I'm putting on this, and that sense of ownership, I think it reaches a certain level where you can begin to own your thoughts. You can begin to own yourself, feeling and knowing that most of the stuff that is around you has actually been a product out of your own hands. And I was drinking my own water. I dug a borehole at my house, and I'm drinking my own water from my own borehole in my house, on my chair, with my clothes, with my music, with my book. It's a different feeling. And it's a space that would wish many of our African people to move into complete ownership of what we have, what we own, what we drink, and what we eat, and what we dress. And for the evening, for the wonderful interview that you've given to me, Honorable Doctor, I thank you very much. It's always a great honor to become part of this conversation. And as we are going forward and moving forward, please, those who are on my timeline, close your eyes and seek for the dreams of the night and visions of inspiration. And may the spirits of the land cast your eyes across your life to the future that your grandchildren would see. And may they, when they come to light of the knowledge of what you will have done, be grateful that you will have lived at this moment to make the decisions that you made and changed their future, to have planted the trees for them, and they can sit down and enjoy the fruits of your own hands. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. That was a wonderful conclusion, and we're all blessed and honored to have you here anytime. Like I said, next week on the conversation, be it on Wednesday or the weekend, we're gonna have you on fashion and music. And fashion would be just on one, and then music also would be on one, where we'd have the workshop with you. But I'll reach out to you, and thank you so very much. You also be blessed out there and continue to produce that generation of dreamers and watchers and doers. Plan, do,
Thank
and adjust is what we learned here today.
you.
Thank you very much. Good night. Good
Good
night.
night to you.
Good night. Good night, sir. Good night, my king. Yes, and I want to thank all of you to watchers and watchers. All of us have become watchers. I mean, a watcher cannot be here and then we still go back to our always. Always. So it has been a wonderful session, and I see all of us really focused. And I hope you were able to get to another step. We started from the baby steps where we crept. Most of us were still sleeping and snoring, and others were tapping us up. And some of us that go walk took the first steps. And yes, if you can see, like the watcher, King Maponga, is already on the other dimension and trying to pull out some of us that are still left behind. I want to thank you for the wonderful comments that you've been sharing out here. And like I said, yes, we are officially launching the website of the Pan African Daily TV, the AfroWorld.tv. Now, when we have this kind of conversations, means we're getting into another level, we're getting into another dimension, and we're calling on all conscious Africans. Please, I want to stress on this. The AfroWorld.tv is not just a social media platform. No, it is not just about us coming to share our other kind of stuffs. Yes, but it's for you that could create content and put out there that would move the next generation. So you can sell anything. When we say sell, people always think, in terms of I have to buy a glass and sell. Selling means you can sell an ideology by giving trainings, workshops, and anything. So whatever you can create in that space that will not be available any other way, bring it on the AfroWorld.tv. Create your account, create your page, create your networks, create your groups, your blogs, and make free calls and begin to share just for conscious Africans. We're not looking at the 1.4 million to gather there. We're looking for the ones that are woke so that we can have a database. We can have news that you put out there. If not, we're going to be repeating the same thing. We're going to be going on Google looking for what Al Jazeera is saying, CNN is saying, and we begin to do the same thing like Joshua is saying here. The AfroWorld.tv means create your stories and put there. I and the team of the Pan African Daily TV are going to pick those information and we reproduce it out here. That's our own way of being the media for education, culture, and business. That is the difference from other existing websites and platforms. On Pan-Africanism, it is not just about the talk, it's about create something and bring, produce something and bring. If you have a talent, whatever thing that you can do. And if you're producing even in your local communities on the continent, don't say it is a diaspora platform. No, it is a digital platform for domestic and international intertrade in every sector. Because we are the news, we need you to produce those contents and put so that we can take it and put it on the Pan African Daily TV. So we are going to be creating our own stories. We're not going to take stories from foreign reporters and tell you the same thing. If you look at the Situation Room, the way we created the focus on Uganda during the elections, you saw that Africans produced their own stories. People were calling in from the continent in the diaspora. Ugandans were in solidarity with one another, telling their stories to you, listeners. It was nobody that was paid from the foreign press to go and report and come and put that content out there for you. That is what the Pan African Daily TV does differently. So we create this content, people call in and tell you the situation on the ground. You were able to feel it. The ones that were crying, the ones that were rejoicing, the ones that were solidarity. I'm not talking only about the case of Uganda. And that is how we produce the content. That is how we change the narratives of the Africa that we want. That is why we say without production, manufacturing what is our own, we will not get there. And I'm happy Joshua has been telling us the same thing. We can create from anything that we are. So we are not going to say, oh, I'm not going to put my products on Amazon because, oh, you need to get a PayPal. And then, no, we just want from the local things. If you're doing something that you want people, even in your community, your neighbors to know it, we're going to bring it on the Pan African Daily TV. What are we saying? It is a platform for the less privileged. But of course, we've seen other structures like Joshua was saying, and they call them the upper class. In French, they call them the bourgeoisies. And we have the first class, just like in any class community society, Africans are also like that. We have the elite, then we have the middle class, and then we have the less privileged. The Pan-African Daily TV focuses on the less privileged. But of course, we are open for the top and also the bottom. But our heart is beating for those ones whom their stories will never be seen anywhere, will never be heard anywhere. And these are the majority. These are the 70% of the so-called poor. These are the 70% of the so-called no access to hear, no voices for them. No media will report their stories because they say they are not famous or they are not known. So if you are in that category, please make sure you create your account. I've been getting a lot of feedbacks of people who say, oh, my email doesn't work, oh, my name doesn't fit. It is usual with any other platform. I do the same on existing platforms. I would want to put an email and I would miss a word, or the password doesn't rhyme. On the AfroWorld.tv, make sure your name is just one word, just one, no comma, no capital letter, and your username. And your email has to be a one that will be verified from the telephone number that you give. All these platforms exist the same. So there is nothing wrong with your login details. Continue to just try and try. I know a couple of people that have said, oh, I tried it the first time and I was frustrated. But the second, third time, it worked. Remember, we in my generation are not the tech savvy. Most of the time, Tumi and Iya are the ones helping me on Asia. Right, because I don't really get it right as well. I'm not the smart generation like you. So most of the time I can give my password a couple of times. It's always going to be wrong until Tumi is going to pick it and give it once and it works. So please be patient. Make sure you create your profiles out there. Put us content there which we can reproduce. Are you a musician? Are you an artist? Are you a designer? Are you just a cook? Are you a storyteller? Are you a poet? Anything that produces what we call culture, you have a platform for you. Because we're not going to be saying we have to do our culture without having the goods. We keep saying, oh, yes, let us go to our spirituality. What is it? Put the products of spirituality on the Afro world. We're going to pick those products and say, this is what spirituality is all about. If we talk about fabrics, put the fabrics out there, show the people how to buy it, connect with you. If you talk about, just even dating, I see there is already somebody creating a page for dating, because sometimes we say we need to connect by dating, but we don't have those services. On the Pan African Daily TV, we're going to get the first Pan African dating services and offers where you can meet your dream partner and what? Why not? Everything we need to find for all avenues to connect and to build the Africa that we want. So anything that you can do, don't underestimate it. Don't underestimate it. We Africans are so blessed with talent, and this talent, we've never had a platform, be it on the continent or in the diaspora. Anything that you can create, you have a marketplace, and this marketplace is called the media. Because when you put that stuff, then we bring it on the platform, then we are changing these narratives. We cannot be changing the narratives by saying, let us believe in our history. Without getting the books there, we're not going to know about that. We can't be saying, oh, we should stop using foreign spaces. No, if we don't create our own beat, our children, our young people are so creative and innovative. I picked the beats that we use on the Pan African Daily TV from young African children that are born in the diaspora that are creating this beat. So we can consume all this stuff. Tomorrow, we're going to get Dr. Tata, who is a pro member on the AfroWorld.tv, and he's going to be talking about his experiences also. But we are also going to focus on what he is doing there. How does the platform benefit him? He is focused also on agriculture. And now we're also going to be having even the voices, historians, archaeologists, like our greatest scholar, Tony brother. And I just know everybody is just looking forward for him. He will be on Saturday. So, but we're going to get a couple of them, like I dropped the flyers out there. Now, but they are concerns that are coming up that Africans are saying, oh, just 26, 27, and 28. No, we're going to be bringing all the collective subgroups. And as you can see from our first image, we are targeting the young, creative Africans. But we are not rejecting the elders like us, but we are saying the future is them. And these are the ones that no one would give them a voice. Nobody would give them a platform. They're doing incredible things. Nobody is telling their story. No media is supporting them or promoting their brands or promoting their art, their dance, their fashion, their food, whatever they're doing to put food on the table for their families, to educate their children. We have no clue. So we're going to be bringing all these kind of people. Forget about the names. We have the names here. We have all of them. But when we're talking about creativity, we want to support and promote the young Africans that are doing marvelous work in the diaspora on the continent. So we see ourselves tomorrow, same time. No, not same time, because Dr. Tata's show is going to start at 6 p.m. 6 p.m. So we're 2 hours ahead, and then we're going to continue with the others. But if something changes, please watch out. I would send a press release out there. But we're also going to have Patrick Kasirem, who is for the social media, and he'll be giving you all the futures of AfroWorld.tv. That's going to be on Sunday. Okay. What we're having in this session is just people that are doing creative stuff, young people out there creating beats, creating whatever, transforming their continent and making a living out of it. We need to promote and brand them. So we see ourselves tomorrow, same time. Thank you so much for being our audience and being on this journey with us. Good night. Bye-bye.